latest thing for present giving.
That'll make you smile.
You've sent us again this week. Now, the wonderful news is, and the reason we're all clapping and cheering is, that we now know exactly how many viewers we had watching last week's programme. We had 120 million viewers. We know that because you remember Sandra Dimler, who came onto the programme last week? She did this. Remember her? Well, she told us that only 1 in a million people can do that. So we asked if those people could please contact us, or maybe 10 or 15, we thought perhaps 20 of them, so they could do it for us here tonight. 120 people immediately rang us up, and 80 of them are here with their tongues. So, ladies and gentlemen, we present now the biggest display of talented tongues on television. Madam, do it. Unbelievable, sir. Brilliant, madam. My goodness me, madam. Sideways. Forwards. Squiggle. Sir. Very squiggly. Oh. Folded up completely. Madam. Pointed at that camera with the red light on. And you're, how old are you?
4 1/4.
Heaven knows what she'll do when she's 4 1/2. Heaven knows, madam. Sort of folded up, yes, madam. Squiggly, sir. Definitely squiggly, madam. Very squiggly, madam. Slightly folded up, yes, so. Now let's get this straight. Have a look at that camera so they can see you too. That's the ears going and the hair going and the tongue going. You've got everything going at once, isn't that amazing? And madam, oh, can we see madam's t-shirt? Let's have a look. Madam's got a tongue and a matching t-shirt doing the same thing. Look. That is wonderful. And madam? Blimey. So, can you do anything else, or is that the full... That one? That one? And madam, how many things can you do? Do that first one again. It's never fallen out, has it?
No, never.
And you speak with it. Sir, what do you do? Oh, I fold up. Ah! Got me. Right, madam. Nobody can do that. Sir. My goodness. You couldn't both do it together, could you? I can imagine that could be quite useful, couldn't it? But I can't imagine why. And, sir. Unbelievable, madam. Maybe you could do it together and wave goodbye. Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, in the audience, I have only one question to ask you now, and that is, what do you think of the show so far? And there are the Katie, my goodness. Oh, look at them all. Well, I bet you've never seen this on television before. Ladies and gentlemen, the talented tongues of Britain. Well, even if you have got the bits of your body perfectly under control, as these young people have here tonight, you do have to wear the right clothes at these upper-class occasions. Ascot this week, for instance. It's been a wonderful fashion show, hasn't it? Henley Royal Regatta, we're afraid, might not be quite so exciting because Mr. Nigel Blakely from East Sussex noticed a report in the Daily Mail that says ladies wearing skirts that show their knees will not be admitted to the steward's enclosure. Why ever not, said Mr. Blakely. What a good question, we thought. So we took identical twins out onto the streets of London, Annie and Charlotte Emerson, in a suit kindly lent by Harvey Nichols that can be worn with or without the knees, to see what people think. And actually, the skirt length affected the way the twins felt, as Charlotte explained to us.
If you have a miniskirt on, you're very aware of what you're showing, and perhaps if you're confident, you can feel sexy in it. But if you're wearing a long skirt, you kind of feel slightly prim and straight and like a lady, I suppose.
So you feel like a lady, and how do you feel?
Well, pretty raunchy.
Pretty raunchy. She looks pretty raunchy, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Hello, good morning.
Oh, hello.
Lovely.
Hello. It's you.
We're doing a fashion box pop.
Well, I'm fashionable. I'm just on the hospital.
Have a look at those ladies and see which
Beautiful.
skirt you like better.
They're both nice. No, I like the long one best. I'm going because I can't sure I'm getting my tablets.
I know. What will happen if you don't get them?
Well, I should get pregnant. I'm 75.
Which length do you like?
The last one.
The longer one?
Yes.
Why?
It looks smarter,
Does
more
it?
chic.
Ah.
I'm sorry, she's got lovely legs, but
It's not quite so sexy, maybe.
but you dress for yourself, don't you? Which one do you feel smarter in?
I feel smarter in the long one, but I'd prefer to wear the shorter one.
No, I'd definitely wear the shorter one. You tart.
I think I'd go for something sort of in between the two.
I think that's great.
Right. Up, up, up.
If it's too short, it loses the sort of sophistication. It is a very sophisticated suit, and if it's much too short, it loses that.
It loses the sophistication, you see.
It's,
If it goes up, up, why do you want it up, up?
Because everybody wants to get up.
Right.
And a lot of ladies are slightly embarrassed about their knees once they reach a certain age and so forth.
What age?
Over 40.
Shouldn't show their knees.
They seem to think they shouldn't show their knees, but there's no reason why. I mean, a lot of people over 40 have wonderful knees, I think. There's nothing wrong with showing knees. I mean, I think I'd rather show my knees, certainly, than show bosoms hanging at the top.
I like a bit of both myself. I like the short ones and the long ones myself.
You've got to choose. I'm not
Well, if I
allowing...
was to choose, I'd choose the short one myself.
Because?
They look better, don't they? They show more of the legs. The legs is the main part about the women, isn't it?
How about the brain?
Oh, well, you look for a good brain in the women, didn't you? She's got a lovely pair of knees there. Yeah, I'll pass the knees test.
Let's have a look.
Oh, my knees.
Your knees.
They're low, isn't it? My knees.
That's a terrific...
I've got very lovely legs, I think. The top parts are the best.
Which is the top part? What,
Oh, this bit here.
the
This
thighs?
is the best part, yeah.
You've got wonderful thighs. haven't
Yeah.
you? Well, you see, this lady's thighs are quite...
It's got lovely thighs.
You quite like all of it, don't you?
Yeah.
See these ladies?
Yes.
Which do you like the better? Why?
I don't know.
Look, there is a difference.
Oh! I only look at the face.
Now, which one will you have?
Which one will I have? Is it for a long weekend or just for the evenings?
It's for sort of 5 seconds.
The lady in the short skirt,
Because...
much sexier.
Now, you see, according to this, skirts that length are not allowed in Henley enclosure. Why? Who is offended by knees?
Well, they've got to have a reason for having these jobs, haven't they?
Oh! Ah!
And if they're not passing new laws or new regulations, then they haven't got a job.
I know which one I prefer.
Go on, then.
That one.
All right, then explain to me why it is that the Henley stewards won't let knees in.
Tradition?
Explain to me.
Oh, well, I really don't know. English tradition is cover your knees, cover your shoulders, wear yash mats next, cover your face.
What's your message to the Henley stewards?
Get the trousers off and show their knees.
Well, that might be a good idea, you know, because the result of our survey was that the women were equally divided on the subject, but the men, there was no contest at all. 5 out of 6 men preferred the shorter skirt. So there obviously is something a bit unusual about the Henley stewards. Do you know, it's a long time since we awarded anyone this. I don't know if you remember this. It's our Nasty Neighbour Award. And this week we've been investigating a very strange situation in Tunbridge in Kent. We heard about it from Patrick Jarvis, who lives there. He told us.
We bought our bungalow here 3 years ago. It's lovely, just what we need, except no garage. When we bought it, the details said space for garage, subject to usual planning permission.
However, it turned out to be a rather unusual planning permission. Patrick told us.
There was no room next to the bungalow for the garage. The only space was at the bottom of the garden, where the last owners had kept a caravan.
Now, we've got a model here, so you can see. And there is the bungalow. Now, as you see, there's no room either side for a garage. The other end was their garden, and that's where their caravan had rested. We said to Patrick, how did you get the caravan out of the garden? He said.
They made a gap in the hedge, with planning permission, and put a little drive in from the road.
Like that.
Because there's a ditch running alongside the road, they built a small concrete bridge over the ditch, and they did all that nearly 10 years ago. And they got their caravan in and out using the drive and the little bridge.
Like this. Brum, 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 brum. Now, the obvious thing, of course, was to build the garage there.
Yes, Tunbridge and Malling Borough Council gave us permission for that, no trouble at all. So we built it at the end of our garden and we used it for a year.
Like, this is good, isn't it? That.
Then in April of last year, I came home and found my wife Bridget was very upset. A man had come up to her in the street and told her quite rudely that we'd built a garage on his land. He was so angry, I began to wonder if it could be true.
So we checked with their lawyer, and he told them that not only did they own the garden that the garage was built on, they also owned the land under the drive and all the land as far as the other side of the ditch. So, at first they just thought the man was mistaken. But then last July, Patrick got a letter, he told us.
It was from another firm of lawyers, and it said that a Mr. J.W. Druce, who used to own the road at the back of our garden, still owned a piece of land where our drive is, and that he hadn't given permission for us to build across it.
What land?
Well, that's what I didn't understand. I went out and searched for any spare ground. There isn't any. The road belongs to the council, the ditch is right along the curb. Well, I suppose there may be a couple of inches at the top of the curb, but certainly not enough to build anything on. So my lawyer wrote and said there is no land.
In reply, Mr. Druce's lawyers wrote back. This is the letter. They said, yes, there is. It's a ransom strip, do you see? And they said that Patrick could buy it for £4,000. Otherwise, he couldn't go on using it. Patrick told us.
I'd never heard of a ransom strip.
I do one every night when I'm going to have a bath.
Sadly, my ransom strip's not as exciting as yours is. Mine's 6 inches of mud and grass.
Sounds rather like mine.
So what's that? And eventually we found mine. It wasn't on the search at all, but when my lawyer wrote to the council, they said that they had taken over the road from Mr. Druce, but he'd kept a little strip a few inches wide all the way along it.
This little strip along there, do you see? We said, how wide is your drive?
8 feet.
So what you're saying is that it would cost you £4,000 for a piece of ground a couple of inches by 8 feet?
Yes, I just haven't got the money. Not only that, but Mr. Druce said I would also have to sign an agreement that nobody could ever build a house in the back garden.
Mr. Druce doesn't own your garden?
No.
He never has owned your garden?
No.
But Mr. Druce is a builder?
Yes, he's a developer. And one of his sons is building a house in someone else's back garden in our road.
And he has no problem getting in or out of the ransom strip?
No.
Well, then there should be no reason why you shouldn't use your own garage.
Well, that's what I thought, so I carried on. Then in February, I came home from work and saw a white cloth fluttering in the dark just in front of the car.
Mr. Druce had surrendered?
He had not. Someone had put great posts outside my garage on my land and tied thick wire between them to stop me driving in. The white cloth had been put on the wire by a kind and thoughtful neighbour who was worried that we might not see it, drive through and hurt ourselves or the car.
You could certainly have done that. How horrible. We told David Tench of Which magazine about this rather unpleasant deed. He said,
"There's a hedge and a ditch on Mr. Jarvis's land, and there's a special presumption in law that says that the chap that owns the hedge also owns the ditch to its furthest point. So there may not be a strip, and nemo dat quod non habet, you can't give away what you ain't got."
You mean a judge could go down and search through the grass and see if the 6 inches do exist?
Absolutely. Have you seen the deeds?
Yes, here are the deeds. They're no good at all. But what we also managed to find was a document from the council saying that Mr. Druce still did own grass verges adjoining the street. But we only discovered this document deep in the files of Kent County Council, and they've got nothing to do with it now. So there's no way Patrick or his lawyer could have known about this. We told David Tench. He said,
"There are often cases like this where there are hidden problems that people don't find out until too late, after they've moved in. It would be better for the consumer and everybody else if there were some kind of central register of information available to people buying property. You should certainly be able to find out who owns the adjoining land, especially when it actually affects the use of your house, as it does in this case."
because poor Patrick needs to use that garage. We did manage to dig up a bit of the grass verge. Here it is. This is what Mr. Druce charges about £500 for. We told that to David Tench. He said,
"What an expensive sod."
and not just expensive, but also very unpleasant, don't you think? Putting posts on someone else's land and then stretching wire between them. We tried to get in touch with Mr. J.W. Druce, but he's in Malta or Gibraltar. We could only contact him via his lawyers, and they said,
"He instructs us to state that this matter is none of your business."
"Oh, poor Mr. Jarvis has asked us to try and help him sort it out. He told us..."
I've left the wire there. My car's in the street. I can't use my nice new garage, and all because Mr. Druce refuses to let me use 6 inches that no one else can find.
You know, there's another Latin phrase for that. It's...
"Terrae tibi tanti si sex digiti nempe certum est aliad te non habere."
And that, of course, means...
If 6 inches is so important to you, it must be all you've got.
Not quite all, because now Mr. Druce has got his Neighbour Award as well. Simon.
Well, I've been sent an advert by Rosina Garwood in Suffolk for a quite impossible job for a salesman. Good, reliable carpet fitter required to cover the Leicestershire area. But whoever placed that one should go to Scotland to the Old Manor Hotel. Bill Christie sent me their brochure. Each bedroom has a colour television, clock, radio, hairdryer, private bath or shower, video films, direct dial telephone, tea and coffee making facilities, and a complimentary Scotsman. Well, there are some pretty strange people around, you know, and Margaret Croft sent me a cutting about one of them. A man carrying a cosh in Folkestone told police that he bought it in Oxfam. Mikola Dunasiev, 46, of Trinity Crescent, Folkestone, said in interviews that he'd been carrying the 10-inch coil of steel with a rubber centre and a brass nut on the end to remind him to have his coat repaired.
We all know these days that AIDS is a terrifying disease, but because it's such a new disease, and because all the government statements are warning us how dangerous it is, it's sometimes not easy to remember that the people who have AIDS are not dangerous. You can eat with them, you can work with them, without catching AIDS from them. This week we heard from Chris Dan, who lives in West London. He told us,
"I've been made to feel just like a leper, unclean, ring the bell. What shocks me is that I've been made to feel like this by the police. They knew I had AIDS. They should have known that I'm not dangerous. I've faced a lot of prejudice over the years, but nothing like the treatment I received the other night."
well, it was the middle of the night. In fact, it was 1:30 in the morning of May the 31st, to be precise, and Chris was driving by himself down the M40 to stay with some friends. We asked him how safe it is for him to drive alone, since he is very ill with full-blown AIDS. He said,
"The drugs I was taking kept me ticking over, quite stable, and it's very important for me to keep going. When I first discovered in 1983 I was HIV positive, it was like hearing a death sentence. But now, in my bleakest moments, I just think, hang in there. I'm going to hang around until they find a cure. That's what keeps me going. Why get panicky about AIDS when there are so many other fatal illnesses? Now I feel I'm just an ordinary person with a virus on board.
So on that night, Chris was driving up to exit 4, the High Wycombe turnoff, when he suddenly saw a traffic cone in the middle of his lane. He told us.
I swerved, the car went up the bank, then it turned over about 5 times. I ended up slammed into the central reservation, facing the wrong way. The car ended up a total wreck. Nothing for it but the scrapyard.
You were lucky to survive.
I was, thank God for the seatbelt and for the instinct that made me cover my head with my arms. Most of the car windows and the windscreen broke, so I had small cuts all over my face and hands. The battery exploded and the battery acid burnt through the clothes I was wearing.
These are the clothes he was wearing. I don't know if you can see, but these are the burns on them. He told us?
I was burned by the acid. I was bleeding a little bit from the cuts, but nothing serious. I was shocked, but I was alive. A very kind man in a BMW stopped and called the police on his car phone. I asked him to put his headlights on so that I could pick up my things from the motorway, my clothes, my special bedding, my food, and my drugs.
And the police arrived quite quickly. Chris told us?
They asked me when I'd last had a drink. I said I didn't know. They said, in that case, I'd better blow into the bag. I said that would be a bit silly because I hadn't had a drink for about 5 years. I told them that I had AIDS and the drugs I'm on preclude my taking any alcohol. They didn't mention the breath test after that. In fact, they hardly spoke to me. I carried on trying to pick up my things. They must have called a tow truck to collect my car because after about 10 minutes, one arrived and the driver winched my car onto the back. I was very anxious to ring my friends and explain to them what had happened. The driver of the truck said I could climb in with him and he'd take me to a phone.
Shouldn't you have gone by ambulance to a hospital?
Well, looking back, yes, I should. I was a bit worried that where the seatbelt had bruised me, I might have had some internal damage. But I suppose I was just mesmerised. Maybe it was the shock. So I climbed in.
And the truck drove him to the railway station at High Wycombe. Chris got out to make the phone call. But before he got to the phone, to his horror, he saw the truck drive away again. He told us...
The police had told the driver to drop me there. I didn't know that. All my money was in the car still, and my address book, and most important of all, my drugs. I have to take them every 4 hours. I screamed after him, "Stop, stop!" But he couldn't have heard me. He drove on. The station was dark, closed up. The last train had gone at 10:30. By now, it was 2:30 in the morning. I couldn't think what to do. I dialed 999 from the phone box and asked to be put through to the police and asked them to ring my friends. They told me to wait there and they'd bring me back. After 10 minutes, I was freezing cold, very tired, and still shocked. I realised I ought to find help, so I started to walk.
He walked until he came to High Wycombe police station. He told us?
I walked in. There were 2 officers on duty. I told them I had AIDS. They must have been able to see I was bleeding a bit. I asked the way to the nearest hospital. There was a squad car parked outside, but they didn't offer me a lift. They told me it was across the roundabout, about 5 minutes walk away. They looked at me as if I was a vagrant. So I walked.
He arrived at the hospital at 3:35. It had taken him 2 hours to get there. Of course, if he'd had an ambulance, it would just have taken a few minutes. He told us...
I've lost a lot of weight. I get very tired, and it took a lot of effort to limp up the last slope to the accident and emergency department. But the nurse I saw there was great. She cleaned the cut on my forehead. A doctor examined me to make sure there were no other injuries, and they brought me tea and a blanket, and then they put me in a warm room with a lovely fire. The nurse was appalled at the way I'd arrived there and how I'd been treated. She told me she'd been making a complaint.
We asked the nurse to confirm Chris's story. She said...
I remember the man well. He was a lovely person. He had a visible cut on his forehead. He was in shock and was given the tender, loving care he needed and something for his headache. I expressed my concern to a police officer who was in the hospital that night. I told my superiors at the hospital, and they intend to complain.
Of course, a major risk for anyone who has AIDS is pneumonia. Chris's consultant at the Hammersmith Hospital is Dr. John Cohen. He told us...
Chris Dan is a very ill man. To be left out in the cold meant he was at increased risk of an infection. It certainly wouldn't have been advisable for him to be left on the street at this time of night. And clearly these police officers did not seem to understand the danger to Chris.
And the truth is, the police themselves were in no danger at all. We checked that with the Health Education Authority, Professor Alistair Geddes, who's a world authority on AIDS and a member of the HEA. He told us...
There was absolutely no risk to the police officers. The only danger would be if his open wound were touched by an officer who also had an open wound. There's no evidence of infection being passed on from one human to another, except through sexual intercourse, blood transfusion, or drug addiction.
We wondered if perhaps the police were a bit scared. So we put that to Thames Valley Police. They told us,
We strongly refute any such suggestion. We've spoken to the officers concerned, and they've searched through their records. Mr. Dan was not asked to take a breathalyzer because the officer had no grounds to suspect that he'd been drinking. He confirmed to the police that he was not injured, that he had no injuries at all. He said, "I must be the luckiest man alive," which was ironic, considering he'd just said that he had AIDS. His sole interest and intent was to pick up his property, and there was no need to call an ambulance because he had no injuries. When the recovery vehicle arrived, the officers explained that Mr. Dan had AIDS. Despite this, the driver agreed to take Mr. Dan to the railway station. The driver then went on to the police station and said that he dropped Mr. Dan there. He added he seemed to be a bit odd.
well, we spoke to the owner of the garage, Markham Garage, in High Wycombe. He told us,
The police told our driver to take Mr. Dan to the station. Our driver presumed Mr. Dan knew this. But after he dropped the gentleman there, the driver went to the police station because he was concerned that Mr. Dan was not at all well. He felt he was not in a state to be left on his own at the railway station because he knew the last train had gone and there wouldn't be another one for more than 3 hours. He wanted the police to look out for him.
these are guidelines issued by the Home Office to the police on this very subject, how to cope with any risk of AIDS. They suggest that police should wear gloves when they're at the scene of a road accident. If a policeman has a cut or a wound, he ought to cover it with a waterproof dressing. They say, of course, great care should be taken when handling syringes, but they explain about AIDS.
It is not transmitted through the air, by food, by the use of eating or drinking utensils, or through coughing, sneezing, or ordinary kissing. People suffering from HIV infection and AIDS can therefore continue to work and lead a normal existence in the community without presenting any significant danger to those with whom they work or who may come into contact with them. People with AIDS are, however, more likely than others to become ill as a result of their reduced ability to withstand infection.
Well, Chris Dan is with us here tonight. Chris, thank you very much for joining us. Now, what message would you have, maybe for the police or indeed for any of us, about the kind of life that you with AIDS have to live? Is there a great deal of fear and prejudice?
It is in evidence, and it's very important for us to be treated as ordinary members of the community and to be left to get on with our lives, not given too much help or support, but just to be treated as a normal person. Because after all I am is a well person nursing a potentially dangerous virus.
And it's very important to you to be able to keep your dignity in a way.
Absolutely. And people just have to realise that we can carry on functioning provided we have regular food and rest and keep our stress levels as low as possible.
So it helps perhaps when you've had a road accident to be treated, as the nurse said, with tender loving care.
Yes, I think so, yeah.
Well, I hope your story has helped a lot of other people also suffering from AIDS. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Esther.
I know it hasn't been easy. Thank you for
Thank
joining
you.
us. Thank you.
Letters you send us, the biggest single subject is junk mail. You hate it, and with good reason. For instance, Jim Campbell lives in Willenhall in the West Midlands, and on Friday, the 28th of April, he was just about to have his breakfast when he heard the postman drop a letter through his letterbox. Then another, and another, and another, and another, and more, and more, and more, and more, and another, and another, and more, and more, and more, and another, and another, and another. Until he went out and found 33 identical letters on his doormat, all saying he'd won a fantastic prize. All he had to do was go to a timeshare presentation and the prize was his. But he didn't want timeshare. He never wanted timeshare. So he rang the company, Barrett International Resorts, and told them. He said, "Please take me off your computer." And it worked. The next day, he didn't get 33 identical Barrett letters. He only got this one. And this one, and this one, and this one, and a few more, and another, and another, and another, and more, and this one, and that one. Another 15. 48 letters in 2 days. Well, when we told Barrett's what they'd done, they apologised and sent Jim and his wife a bunch of flowers. And another, and another, and no, seriously, they didn't. They only sent the one. But Jim is the tip of the iceberg.
And we've had literally thousands of complaints from other people who've had other timeshare offers, all promising dazzling prizes if you'll go to their sales pitch. And thousands more who've been offered phony jobs that they can do at home, typing envelopes and so on. Jobs that don't really exist.
And thousands of chain letters and letters from family heritage offering to trace your name, and letters from Ben Buxton, the American who sells jewellery, from a shiny office in Hackensack, New Jersey, that he threw Adrian out of earlier this year. You may remember.
Mr. Buxton, is he in?
No, he's not in today.
But his car's outside.
He's not using. We're asking you guys to leave the building.
Oh,
you have to leave the building.
Well, we just like...
You have to leave the building.
We'd just like to know... Hey, that's our camera. Will you leave the camera alone, please? Why? What's the problem? We'd just like to know why you're ripping people off in Great Britain, because we've got a lot of consumers who would like to know this. I somehow feel they didn't really want to talk to us very much.
And can you blame him? But how many forests have been destroyed to make all this junk mail?
Nobody knows. And nobody knows how to stop the computers bunging up your letterboxes with all this stuff. Unless the company is a member of the Mailing Preference Service. This is their address, and some of the biggest companies are. If you write to them saying that you don't want any more junk mail, it could work. But of course, a lot of the companies aren't members.
So what we've tried to do is to find some way of using the junk mail. And here it is.
This is Family Heritage, made exclusively from your junk mail letters, offering to trace your family. Lisa wears a short yellow paper mini dress made with promises to trace your family and threaded with green timeshare offers. The whole outfit topped off with this unbelievable sun hat made from offers to buy tacky bow jewels. Your letterbox would be really flapping to the sight of this. This is Madame Daudet style, a wonderful outfit made exclusively for Ascot. Bernadette's pink dress is guaranteed to turn to blotting paper in the rain. Madame Daudet provides you with astrological readings which will bring you the luck you need to become a millionaire at Ascot, or not. The matching paper pink and white hat is made from the same incredible offer. Timeshare junk mail is sported here by Lucy, a brightly coloured short dress. It has an overshift bringing you still more holiday offers from the back down to the floor. And don't forget, you can swap this dress for any other dress belonging to a timeshare owner for 2 weeks anywhere in the world. This dress may be your last resort. And our junk mail bride is Julia. Her holiday exchange offers dress is emblazoned with "This is your lucky day." It's a beautifully packaged hard sell, and she's got her customer. The deal is clinched with these latticed sleeves, which, like the holiday exchange offers, are coming up roses. But watch out for hidden thorns.
Good idea, don't you think? Thank you, ladies. You look absolutely gorgeous, dressed in a load of litter. You couldn't look more beautiful. And, incidentally, speaking of timeshare, which these two ladies are dressed in, we have discovered a couple of companies that claim I own timeshare property. Well, I don't. So if any salesman tells you that, I'd love you to record him saying so and send the tape to us. Simon.
Well, people sometimes write to newspapers with their problems. And Sally White found one, though, that's a bit out of the ordinary. A couple enjoying an intimate session in the back of their Fiat Panda overlooking the Bay of Naples were taken by surprise when another car crashed into them. Now the owner of the Panda is suing the driver of the other vehicle because his girlfriend is pregnant. He claims the shunt caused him to lose control. He wants a particularly large sum because he says he will now have to marry the girl and bring up the child. Does third-party insurance cover it, I wonder? But very soon, the problem pages of the newspapers are going to be full of letters from a desperately disappointed Howard, who's in a terrible state of shock after receiving this letter. Head Office, Playgirl Incorporated, Central Division, London WC1, 15th of June 1990. Dear Howard, Your name has been submitted to us together with a photograph, but I regret that we will be unable to use your body in our magazine centrefold display. On the scale of 0 to 10, your body rated -2 by a panel of women judges whose ages range from 62 to 76. We had tried to assemble our panel from the age bracket of 25 to 30, but unfortunately we were unable to get them to stop laughing for long enough to reach a decision. Should the taste of British women change so drastically that bodies such as yours could be used, you will be notified by this office immediately. In the meantime, we've taken the liberty of submitting your photograph to our sister publication, the Saudi Arabian Camel Keeper, which, as you may know, is a weekly publication. Yours with sympathy and sincerity, Daphne O'Donnell, editor of Playgirl Inc. P.S. We commend you for your pose. Were you wounded in the war, or do you ride a bike?
Very sad, isn't it? Last week we told you about Mr. Greenfield, who came back from holiday and found somebody had nicked his loo. This week, even worse, we heard from Timothy King, who lives in Coulsdon in Surrey. He told us.
We've lost something even more precious. We moved into our house 2 years ago. My wife Elizabeth is a country girl from Cornwall, and she doesn't like London at the best of times. So she had to have a big garden. And that's why we were so delighted to find our house. It's got a huge back garden. At the end, it was a forest of holly and evergreen shrubs and rambling rose, which made a marvellous screen. Beyond that, a railway cutting and a public footpath. That was a bit mucky, covered with rubbish, but we wrote to British Rail and asked them to tidy it up a bit. And anyway, all we could see was just trees, and beyond that, green fields. It was ideal.
And Elizabeth worked very hard on the garden, digging and sowing a new lawn, until she created a little paradise. Timothy told us.
And then on May the 11th, I came home from work and found her in tears. She took me out into the garden and pointed. Where once there was holly and ivy and evergreens and shrubs and rambling roses, there was a fence and some stumps. Paradise lost.
How did it happen?
Well, we didn't know. Someone had climbed right over our fence and cut down more than 20 of our trees. It looked like the Chainsaw Massacre. We couldn't understand why.
You were completely stumped.
We were. Who could have hated lovely 30-year-old, 30-foot-high trees with a little semi-tame squirrel that lived in our hazelnut tree? He's gone too. And the bank to the railway cuttings is still strewn with the bits of our cut-down trees.
That was on a Friday night. So on Monday, Timothy rang British Rail to discover if they knew anything about it. He told us.
They said they'd been doing some tidying up. I said, you can't call this tidying up. Come and have a look.
So a British Rail man came. He said,
how can this have happened? They were so thrilled. They were only tidying up and they came back and said they'd worked so hard down there. They'll be delighted.
We said to Elizabeth, they thought you'd be delighted. She said,
do you know how we spent the bank holiday? We sat in our garden behind dust sheets hung on a line so that everybody passing by on the footpath couldn't stare at us. It's the main route to the only pub for miles. Now I really know what my lovely hazelnut was protecting us from. People, trains, we're on view to the world. What's more, all these dead branches are now a fire risk.
Couldn't you ask British Rail to clear them away?
You're joking. Now I've seen what they can do when they tidy up. I don't want them near the place.
You can understand it, can't you? We rang British Rail. We spoke to a Mr. Chris Jennings. He said,
the problem seems to be that Mr. and Mrs. King wrote to us and asked us to tidy up the bank.
We said, yes, this is a copy of the letter, but it was asking you to tidy up the rubbish, the bottles and cans and things. It's hardly a reason to cut down the trees inside the garden. Mr. Jennings said,
in this case, our men were overzealous. The workmen got carried away and did more than they should. We're very sorry and we accept responsibility.
So they're going to try and replace the trees and shrubs if they can. Not that it's easy to replace full-grown trees. But in the meantime, it has given us an idea for a new award, if you'd like to help us with it. It's for someone who does what you ask them to, but when they've done it, you just wish they hadn't ever started. This is the award. The first winner is British Rail for lopping down the King's Garden Paradise. And they get our Service with a Spit Award. We would be glad, of course, to hear from you of any other worthy nominations. Simon.
Well, I'm delighted to learn of a vicar with service with a smile from Margaret Lewis, who lives in Wrexham, and her local minister's incredibly active. Her parish magazine under baptism says, those wishing children should contact the vicar after giving 1 month's notice. And if you're utterly fed up with football, have a look at the picture in the Ford News that shows what an elegant game hockey is. Ouch.
And finally, finally, a story of mother love. Mr. and Mrs. Graham live on a farm in Dromore, Northern Ireland, and they had a cat who's just had a litter of kittens, but tragically, at the end of May, the cat died. And the kittens would never have survived if they hadn't been adopted by one of the chickens. Gavin went to meet Shaddy Graham, the farmer himself, and his wife Betty, and to hear from them how this most unusual adoption happened. It began on the fatal day when Shaddy realised the cat had disappeared.
And I come in and I says to the wife, I says, we have got a problem. She says, what's wrong? I says, I believe the cat has been killed. She says, she wasn't here the night when I come home and there's still no sign of her, and says she wouldn't be away all that long from the kittens. And I says, if that's the case, we'll have to get rid of the kittens because they're too young. They're only 5 or 6 days old. There's no way that they'd be fit to feed her for themselves, like. And she says, don't do anything too quick. So we left it, and on the Friday morning, whenever I come out on Friday morning, about 7:15 or so, to the shed again to see, you know, if the cat had come back or whatever, I discovered that the hen was in the nest where the kittlings were. And you wouldn't have known that there was a kitten there. You just seen the hen, like, and I says, oh, there may be a way. And I put my hand underneath the hen, and I felt them, and I lifted one out, and they were lovely and toasty and warm. And I come flying in again, I says to the wife, I says, the kittens is all right, they might be hungry, but they're lovely and warm, there's a hen has took over. And she says, I don't believe it. Well, I says, come on, do you see? And I says, but what are we going to do about feeding them? Because they'll not be able to lick milk. And when I came home on Friday night, she says, I fed the kittens. I says, how did you feed them? She says, wait, I'll show you. And she got a syringe that I had for injecting the animals. And she got this wee sort of a rubber tit. I don't know where she got it, but she had it on the end of the syringe, and the kittens was able to suck.
Here you are.
And between her and me, we fed them and fed them, and the hen, she looked after them. She was the mainstay because she kept them warm, like.
Because really, I only fed the kittens, but she actually mothered them and kept them warm during the day and during.
Weren't they lovely? Well, I'm afraid next week it's the last programme of this series, so we do hope you'll join us. We are back in January, so don't break your hearts too early. We'd like you to join us next week, though. Till then, good night.